All right, I'm going to go through a couple questions on here of the non-repeating and repeating decimal together. So the first thing we have to do is we have to look and, before we do that, I'm going to first this off to the side, write x is equal to the decimal that we have to begin with, because we're always going to be multiplying something, so it just gives us something to refer back to. Remember, the bar over top of the 2,7 like this means that only this 2,7 repeats. So if we were to actually write this out, it would be 0.4272727, ... meaning it keeps going. So what you need to do is identify what place value does it take for the non-repeating decimal and the repeating decimal for it to start to repeat again. So here we have 4, 2, 7, and then it starts its repeating pattern there. So I see, okay, it takes until our 10th, our hundredths, our thousandth spot for the decimal to end its first repetition and start over again. So I need to multiply my decimal by 1,000 because that's the place value that it stopped its repeating and started over again. So by doing that, I pull out both the repeating and the non-repeating part of my decimal and just leave the 0.27 repeating in the decimal place. Because by doing that, it's going to allow for me to get rid of that in the next step. So when we multiply that by 1,000, what we can think of is we just did 1,000 times x, because x we know is equal to the decimal. So that means this we can refer to as 1,000x. Now the next thing that we need to do is we need to move the non-repeating part out as our whole number and just leave over the repeating decimal. So if I have 0.427 repeating, well, here, my non-repeating part is just my 10th. So if I multiply this by 10, I will get 4.27 repeating. And once again, this is 10 times our original decimal, or 10x. By doing this, it now isolates our repeating decimals as the only thing left in our decimals. So that when we subtract down, this is going to cancel out and give me 0 because it's 0.27 repeating all the way to infinity. So when we subtract, it's going to just eliminate and erase each other out and give us 0 as our decimal. And that's our whole goal, is to get rid of any decimal. And now we subtract 427 by 4. So that gives me 423. By doing that, we also think about, well, we did our original decimal times 1,000 and then times 10. And when we subtract these two, essentially we're doing 1,000 minus 10, which is giving me 990. And now we create a fraction with these two numbers, 423 over 990. We look to see, remember, 3 is the first number that you probably should start with. Well, 4 plus 2 plus 3, this gives me 6, that's 9. Remember, if that's divisible by 3, then that means that the whole number is also divisible by 3. So I can do 423 divided by 3. It gives me 1. This gives me 4 minus 3 is 1. Bring the 2 down. Goes into it 4 times. And goes into it 3 one time. So when we divide this by 3, that gives me 141. Divide this by 3, that gives me 330. And since 1 plus 4 plus 1 is equal to 6, and 6 is divisible by 3, that means 141 is also divisible by 3. So it goes into it 4 times, so minus 12. So it goes into it 47. And then 330 divided by 3 is 110. So that final answer will give us 47 over 110. All right, now, before I go through this one, I want you to pause the video and see if you can get this one on your own, and then follow the steps of what I'm doing versus what you're doing. I'm not going to explain this one as much because I just explained it in the previous question. We're just going to kind of go through and do this one. All right, so here I see that only the 6 is repeating, so it's 6, 6, 6, 6, ... So here is where I need to multiply out first, 10, 100, and 1,000. So I'll multiply out by 1,000, so that gives me 836.6 repeating. And remember, that we can think about as 1,000x. Then I look at 0.836 repeating, and I need to pull out the non-repeating part. So the non-repeating goes to the hundredth. So I'm going to multiply that by 100, and that will then give me 83.6 repeating. Remember, by doing this, I'm going to erase this part. By doing this, it's now isolating our repeating decimals directly underneath each other. So now it's 1,000x, but the other one I multiply by 100. So then I have 100x. I'm going to go ahead and subtract these. So 836 minus 83, that gives me 753. By isolating those repeating decimals, they're going to cancel out and give me the 0. And we'll subtract these to get 900x. So now we will go ahead and put 753 over 900. Well, 7 plus 5 plus 3, that's equal to 15, which is divisible by 3. So I know the whole thing's divisible by 3. So 753 divided by 3, that goes into it twice. That gives me 15, so it goes into it 5 times and 1 time. So this is going to reduce to 251, and 900 divided by 3 is 300. So 2 plus 5 is 7, plus 1 is 8, which is not divisible by 3. So that's the smallest that we can possibly make it. So our final answer is 251 over 300.